Hi everyone, great to have you here. My name is Ifeanyi Owolo and I'm a CBAP certified business analyst. So on this channel, this is where we discuss business analysis. If you've been joining us, you've understand that in the previous channels, we've tried to look and understand the meaning of business analysis. We've tried to ask ourselves to also understand who is a business analyst. We also try to look at the certifications you can undertake as offered by the International Institute of Business Analysis that will qualify you to be a certified business analysis professional. We also went forward to look at the structure of the business analysis body of knowledge, which is the guide that regulates the practice of business analysis. We look at the structure of BABOK, we looked at the knowledge areas, we looked at the business analysis core concept model, we looked at the techniques used in business analysis, we looked at the underlying competencies. And so today we want to have a little an in-depth discussion on one of the business analysis core concept model that we've mentioned before, and that's stakeholders. If you recall, let's take our mind back a little. In the definition by Babok of business analysis, Babok defined business analysis as the practice of enabling change in an enterprise by identifying needs and recommending solutions that deliver value to stakeholders. So you can see that stakeholders is a very, very important concept in business analysis. Why is it very, very important? The business analyst does not function in isolation. His work is performed among people and with people. The requirements, the understanding of the need, the designing of the solution, all those things are done in collaboration with people. And so you need to really understand who those people are if you have to perform very well in your practice of business analysis. In the definition of business analysis that I just mentioned now, we have six concepts that stand out. We have the concept of need, we have the concept of change, we have the concept of value, we have the concept of context or enterprise, we have the concept of solution, and then finally we have the concept of stakeholders. And so today our emphasis is on the concept of stakeholders. And we'll be able to ask ourselves, who is a stakeholder? Who do we refer to as a stakeholder in business analysis? If you look at the word that makes up stakeholder, it's comprised of two words. So you have stake and holder. And I'm going to try to explain it in a very simple term. So stake can mean, when you say somebody has a stake in something, it can mean that the person has an interest in something, or the person has a concern in something. So the person has something to either lose or gain. In that thing, he has a stake. And then holder. So holder is maybe the person who has that stake. So put together, stakeholder means somebody who has interest, somebody who has concern, somebody who has who stands to lose or gain if something does not work properly. So bringing it back to the concept of business analysis, a stakeholder is anybody who has interest in the need, or who will be affected by the need, or by the solution, or by the change. It can also be put differently to say, is anybody who will be impacted by the need, by the solution, or by the change? Or differently to say, who the need, the solution, or the change will impact. So it's two ways. Is either the stakeholders is impacting the need, or the solution, or the change, or the need, the solution, or the change is impacting the stakeholders. And because these things are performed, change is performed in the context of an organization. So we can use the organizational boundary to categorize stakeholders. So when stakeholders are found within the boundaries of the organization, we classify them as internal stakeholders. When stakeholders are found outside the boundaries of the organization, we classify them as external stakeholders. And so in this discussion, as we move forward, you will see why it is very, very important that for us as a business analyst, you identify all your stakeholders. And so we ask the question, why are stakeholders so important? Stakeholders are so important because all the tasks you perform on business analysis, from analyzing of your current state, from definition of your future state, from coming up with your change strategy, from assessing risk, and all the things you do, all the tasks you perform across all the knowledge areas, you perform that in conjunction with or in collaboration with stakeholders. And so it's very, very, very important that you identify your stakeholders, understand who your stakeholders are. In trying to solve a need or identify a need, remember we said that a need is either a problem or an opportunity you're trying to take advantage of. A problem you're trying to solve, an opportunity you're trying to take advantage of. You cannot understand the need if you don't identify the stakeholders who will tell you what the problem is or who will point you to the opportunity. And so that's why identification of stakeholders is very, very important. If you look at the screen, you will see where it is said that input from stakeholders help their business analysts to understand the kind of system that is needed. So apart from helping you to understand the need, it also helps you to understand the solution, because it's when you understand the need properly, that's when you understand the solution. So stakeholders are the ones that will provide you with the critical information about the features you want to see in the system. They are in the best position to offer specific needs. Remember, when we talked about requirement classification sigma, we said that we have four categories of requirements. That will have the business requirements, which points to the high level goals and objectives of the project. And then it's cascaded down to the stakeholders requirement, which has to do with the needs and wants that the stakeholders want to see in solution. So it's the stakeholders that will actually tell you about the needs. And so if you don't have the right stakeholders, you cannot satisfy the business requirements. And if you're not satisfying the business requirement, you're not satisfying the goal and objective of the project. It's only when you understand the stakeholder requirement that you can begin to profile solution requirements, which contains the functionalities that will address those stakeholders' requirements. And so the importance of having stakeholders properly identified cannot be overemphasized. They aid us in the construction of use diagrams and maps, flow diagram and flow charts. Implementation subject matter experts helps us in coming up with solution designs. Domain subject matter experts help us in understanding the need. So at each and every of the stakeholders you'll be working with in the course of your practice as a business analyst have a very important role to play to you. So that's why it's very, very, very important that you really need to understand your stakeholders. You really need to understand their commitment. You really need to understand what they stand for. You will begin to see later towards the end of this course, as we discuss on this course, that missed stakeholders equals missed requirements. If you miss a stakeholder, you have missed some requirements, and the cost of missed stakeholders is very, very expensive, as we will see as we move forward. So how do we identify stakeholders? The first way of identifying stakeholders is to look at your initial project documents. This can come from your project charter, or from your business case, or from any other project documentation. The initial plan or another initial document that can help you in identification of stakeholders can be the organizational chart. Another thing can also help you, another person that can help you at the onset of a project to identify stakeholders is usually the sponsor. So, but the best way to understand and identify all your stakeholders is to continue to ask questions. Ask questions to say, who will use this product? Who will be affected by this product? Who will be affected by the change? Who will use the solution? Who are we building for? Which tool or processes will this new system replace? What is the regulators? Who will regulate this product? Who will be impacted by this product? Who are the people we need to consult? Who are we buying materials for? Who will supply us materials for this implementation? What are the legal restrictions that will affect this implementation? Who are the people that will support this application when it is built? Who are the people that will? So just keep asking questions about who will be affected by a solution. And that's why I like to give the example that in terms of stakeholder identification, it's like a fisherman who has gone to fish in the sea, but instead of using a hook you are using a net, you're using a dragnet. And so the essence of using a dragnet is that you want to collate as much fish as possible. I tell you from experience that when it comes to building applications and when it comes to stakeholder identification, it is always good and better to identify a stakeholder and maybe later on in the project to find out that that stakeholder was not needed than not to identify a stakeholder and to find out later on in the project that that stakeholder was needed. The cost is usually expensive. I had a colleague of mine who had a bigger experience. He began an implementation and he did not identify a critical stakeholder and proceeded with the development, completed it, got to internal testing, completed it, now got to UAT, and it was now time for the user acceptance testing to be signed off. And it happened that one of the people that must sign off was a critical stakeholder in that unit where he's building the application. And the person said, hey, I was never aware that this application was even being built, and I can't sign. And the important that if the person does not sign, the application cannot be deployed. And at that point, the person said, in fact, if I have to sign, there's a requirement I want to be included in this solution. That I've always had it in mind that anytime there's a build like this, I will add this requirement. Do you know that at that point, that person insisted that that requirement must be added, and they have to go back to development to begin to scope that requirement into build? You can imagine the cost, the additional cost that will amount to. You can imagine the impact on the schedule for that project. It means that that project will no longer deliver on time. You can imagine the losses. Assuming this is a project that was being built so that they can meet time to market and take care of an opportunity in the market that exists. Imagining how to deliver, what it will cost that company because they now have to shift and deliver that thing late beyond the project schedule just because a stakeholder was missed. That's how critical it can be to miss a stakeholder. And that's why we are taking our time to dedicate a particular course just on stakeholders, just to underscore the importance of stakeholder identification and stakeholder management in the course of your work as a business analyst. All right. So you have stated it before. It's not just about identification of stakeholders also. I want to talk about stakeholder analysis. So after you've identified your stakeholder, it's also very, very important that you analyze them. What do I mean by stakeholder analysis? Trying to understand the attitude, the influence, the psychology of your stakeholders. So you are expected to profile them and understand their level of interest and commitment to the project. You also expected to also classify them using the RSI chart. So you classify them according to the stakeholders that are responsible, according to the stakeholders that are accountable, according to the stakeholders that must be consulted, and according to the stakeholders that must be informed. Usually the position of accountable is usually given to one person, but other stakeholders can hold multiple roles when it comes to responsible, consulted, and informed. I want to say this when it comes to stakeholders' attitude that have authorizing power and those that have influence. And let me use a simple example. Maybe you are in marketing and you've gone to an organization to see the MD, and you feel that the person who will really approve for what you're coming for is the MD because he has the authorizing power. But before you need to see the MD, there's a secretary. The secretary to the MD does not have authorizing power, but he has influence. And so you have to be mindful of all stakeholders. If the secretary tells you that the MD is not around, when the MD is around, you cannot see the MD. So that's why the importance of stakeholder collaboration, the importance of understanding the level of influence and the level of authority of all your stakeholders is very, very important. In your project, you have to make sure that at any point in time, that the commitment and the interest of your stakeholders to your project is top notch, and it's your responsibility to manage those commitments. As a matter of fact, if you notice that is there any stakeholders that is showing negative interest to the project, the expectation is that as a business analyst, that should even be classified. That stakeholder should be classified as a risk. Risk in the sense that you now have to devote additional time, additional energy to collaborate with that stakeholder to make sure that their level of commitment comes up to the required level to enable you to deliver on the project goals. And so that's why stakeholder collaboration is very, very important, and it goes hand in hand with stakeholder analysis. Only when you analyze your stakeholders and you understand their temperament, you understand their commitments, you understand their interest in the project, that you'll be able to now decide on the right stakeholder collaboration that will come into place for you to be able to manage them. As you also profile your stakeholders and you understand them, you also be able to come up with the right communication plan to be able to manage them. So you'll find out when we go deep dive later under the knowledge areas that in terms of stakeholder engagement approach, you will be talking about the stakeholder collaboration plan and the stakeholder communication plan. But like I said earlier, I would like to emphasize that overlooking an important stakeholder is very, very expensive. It's something you don't want to do. It's something you don't want to experience. It's something you don't want to see happen in your project. And as a business analyst, you're expected to build trust, and you do that through proper collaboration, through proper communication and interaction with all your stakeholders, in line with the right communication plan and in line with the right collaboration plan for all your stakeholders. Um, so let's try to now look at the common stakeholders we encounter in the practice of business analysis. So you have, first of all, the customer. A customer is the individual that uses the deliverable produced by the enterprise. A customer can be internal or external, but usually customers are classified as external stakeholders. Then we have the domain subject matter experts. Domain subject matter expert is an individual who has a well-grounded knowledge in a particular area or specialty. So you might find these people as usually head of department or head of a unit, somebody who spent some years in that department. He has the right experience, is quite exposed when it comes to the processes. And so these people are called domain subject matter experts. So if you are building any application with regards to that department where they operate, they are the right people that will give you all the details of what you need to know about that process, of the process in that unit or department. Then we'll have the end users. These are stakeholders with direct interaction with the solution. They are usually the people that use the solution, so they can tell you exactly firsthand where the pain points lies with that solution. They are usually classified as internal stakeholders. Then we'll have the implementation subject matter experts, like the name sounds, implementation. So these are the people with in-depth knowledge of how to build the solution. They understand how to convert the design into an actual solution. So they are the one that understand the technical requirement, the dependencies. And in this category, you usually find, especially in the software implementation, you usually find the developers, the database engineers, and all those people, the solution architects, all those people that work in those job roles and categories. And then we have the operational support. These are people who support the day-to-day running and use of the solution, and they assist in maintaining the solution for optimal performance. These are very, very critical stakeholders you don't want to overlook when you are building a solution, because they support the application from the day-to-day on a day-to-day basis. They understand the issues that the applications can have developed, or the issues they resolve on a daily basis, and so that will be coming very handy in terms of improvement for you when you want to build a new solution. Of course, you have the project managers who are responsible for executing the project work in order to deliver the solution scope. They are responsible for managing risk on the project and making sure that the baselines, the project management baselines are maintained. And so, as a business analyst, you want to work closely with the project manager. Reason being that at the end of the day, the business analysis activities must align with the project management activities. And then the regulators are responsible for defining and enforcing regulations and standards. And so for any project you're building, you don't want to run foul of the law. You need to identify what the regulation says, who are the regulators, and make sure that you have their buy-in and their commitment, you have their approval for whatever project you are implementing. And then the sponsors, these are people who authorize, who fund the project, required to deliver the solution. So you don't want to miss out on your sponsor on the project. You need to understand them, understand how they want to be engaged, understand their preferred communication part, and make sure you engage them as the need arises. And then you have suppliers and vendors. These are usually external people who provide you with some services or with some products that help enable you deliver your solution. So you need to identify them, know who they are, and know how best to engage with them. And then, of course, your testers or quality assurance analysts. These are the people who are responsible after the solution has been built to validate that the solution meets all the acceptance and evaluation criteria, and of course the definition of done. So these are people you also want to identify very early in your project and carry all of them along. And so this is in summary all the a summary of all the stakeholders you're likely to encounter in the course of your practice as a business analyst. I will encourage you, like I said, in summary, as we round off, always make sure to identify as many stakeholders as possible. Always ask questions. And the questions, critical questions to ask is, who will be impacted by this solution? Who will be impacted by this need? Who will be impacted by this change? Or who will this need impact? Who will this solution impact? Who will this change impact? If you do this, I'm sure you'll be able to identify all the stakeholders, because always remember that a missed stakeholder equals a missed requirement, and that can be very expensive. Thank you for listening to me, and see you on the next time we meet on this channel. Bye bye.